Good evening, I'm Archie Heasley and welcome to the National Report. Tonight we're covering a growing concern in the world of digital media. As the debate over online content intensifies, concerns are mounting over the return of previously banned accounts to one of the internet's largest platforms, X. Critics warn that the reappearance of these high-profile accounts risks reigniting the spread of harmful rhetoric, misinformation and extremist content, raising serious questions about the platform's commitment to content moderation. Also on the programme, a recent study has revealed alarming trends in online radicalisation, showing how digital spaces are increasingly becoming breeding grounds for extremist ideologies. In our final story tonight, questions are growing over the government's delayed action in regulating digital harm. Critics argue that the lack of comprehensive regulation is allowing harmful content to flourish unchecked. But before we return to the rest of tonight's headlines, we begin with a special report, an in-depth documentary investigating how far-right figures and ideologies, once pushed to the margins of public discourse, are now being reintroduced and normalised across mainstream platforms. Thank you, and enjoy. For a long period of time, far-right ideologies were forced to the fringes of political and media relevancy. Political parties with extreme right-wing policies performed poorly election on election. They were pushed out of the mainstream. From established news channels to social media platforms, they weren't welcome. Of course, because of this, they had to find a place of their own. This led to the creation of what's known as fringe platforms. Fringe platforms are defined as alternative platform services that are established as an explicit critique of the ideological premises and practices of mainstream platform services. According to GMF News, content on fringe sites often serves as a harbinger, a signal of what is to come, for problematic and divisive communication across mainstream social media platforms. Common examples of alternative platforms include Gab, 4chan and 8chan. Despite fringe platforms being set up to critique mainstream platforms, users can be active on both fringe and mainstream. The European Consortium for Political Research, also known as the ECPR, traced roughly 10 million URLs posted between January 2019 and March 2022 across the mainstream platforms Facebook and X, and the fringe platforms Telegram, Gab and 4chan. Results showed around 10% of all URLs shared on mainstream platforms were first shared on a fringe platform, backing up the point of fringe platforms acting as a signal of what is to come for mainstream platforms. Stormfront was the first major hate site on the internet, founded by former KKK member and longtime white supremacist Don Black in 1995. It's amassed over 300,000 registered members, and the site has been a popular forum for white nationalists and other racial extremists, despite its active members now declining. Stormfront was designed as a message board, allowing registered users to post articles and opinions, ongoing discussion and dialogue, and the development of a tight-knit white supremacist online community. Despite the hateful ideology, the platform enforced rules banning racial slurs, profanity, and explicit threats or illegal content to maintain a cleaner image. These rules designed not out of moderation, but to make extremism seem more presentable and mainstream. In 2014, the Southern Poverty Law Centre reported that nearly 100 homicides had been committed by Stormfront members, perhaps one of the reasons why only 20,000 of the 300,000 members were active posters. However, despite declining public web traffic, Stormfront's membership continued to grow due to the increasing reliance of the radical right on online activism. Stormfront was one of the most extreme examples of alt platforms having free speech as a cover for extremism. Another high-profile case that this happened was Gamergate in 2014, an online anti-women harassment campaign. Initially sparked by false accusations against game developer Zoe Quinn after the release of her game, Depression Quest, the campaign quickly escalated into a targeted misogynistic backlash against women in the gaming industry. Figures like Quinn, journalist Jen Frank, and critic Anita Sarkeesian faced rape and death threats, doxing, and coordinated smear campaigns across platforms like 4chan and Reddit. What began as a purported ethics debate soon revealed itself as a recruitment ground for the emerging alt-right, one that weaponized
internet culture to legitimize hatred and silence other voices.
Similarly, though on a much larger scale, Telegram has become a key platform that prides itself on loose content moderation and so-called free speech, a stance that has made it a haven for extremist communities and disinformation. Telegram's website states, Telegram is committed to protecting user privacy and human rights such as freedom of speech and assembly. Yet according to the UK government's reviewer of terrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, at least half of terrorism propaganda persecutions last year involved the Telegram app. So, what is Telegram? Telegram is a platform launched by brothers Pavel and Nikolai Durok in 2013. The platform, now headquartered in Dubai, is funded solely by donations from its founders. It became popular in the US after platforms such as Facebook and Twitter deplatformed users who violated their terms of service by posting hate speech or disinformation. In 2015, Telegram added broadcast channels for one-way communication, as well as public/private discussion groups that can host up to 200,000 viewers, making the platform indispensable for extremist groups. Last August, French authorities arrested Pavel Durov on charges related to Telegram's use by criminals to conduct activities including money laundering and drug trafficking.
Next, I'll explain to you the concept of the Great Replacement theory. It's a white supremacist, xenophobic and anti-immigrant concept that suggests white people are being replaced by immigrants, Muslims and other people of colour in their so-called home countries.
The Great Replacement was created by a Frenchman, Renaud Camus, who popularised the idea in his 2011 book, Le Grand Replacement. However, over the course of time, theories such as the Great Replacement and the far right in general have been allowed back in the mainstream, in politics and media. How has this happened? To aid us in finding this out, we'll investigate two specific case studies. Elon Musk's purchase of X, formerly Twitter, and Tucker Carlson's work to spread right-wing hate through his various shows and his normalisation of the mainstreaming of the Great Replacement theory. First though, it's important we talk about how the far right have been allowed back in the mainstream. Some people will notice it more than others, but the facts are undeniable. According to a University of Surrey research piece, the populist radicalist far right is starting to firm its root in mainstream politics. Professor Danielle Albertazzi said, "The line between radical right and mainstream politics has started to become blurred. What we are witnessing is not a temporary surge, but a shift in political norms and values." Now, let's look in depth at Elon Musk and his purchase of X. After completing the $44 billion deal to buy X, Elon Musk spent the first 6 weeks of his tenure facilitating the far right by reinstating and interacting with right-wing figures responsible for spreading bigotry and misinformation. Between October 27th and December 13th, 2022, he interacted with these types of accounts at least 170 times. Further adding to the proof of his far-right facilitation, the 7-day average of tweets using a specific hate term prior to Musk's acquisition was never higher than 84 times per hour. From midnight on October 28th to 12 noon, however, the number jumped to some 4,708 times. A year on, he restored the X account of Alex Jones, a conspiracy theorist and far-right broadcaster, primarily known for using an old platform, InfoWars, to spread false claims about the 2012 mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. He announced Jones's X account would be reinstated after running a poll whether his followers could decide whether he should be or not. Previously, Musk had declined requests to reinstate Jones. In a November 2022 post, Musk explained his stance by saying, "My firstborn child died in my arms. I felt his last heartbeat. I have no mercy for anyone who would use the deaths of children for gain, politics, or fame." The U-turn emphasises his position on free speech, later stating, "I vehemently disagree with what he said about Sandy Hook, but are we a platform that believes in free speech, or are we not?"
The normalisation of far-right values are evident from Elon Musk's purchase of X. Moving on to the focus of the Great Replacement theory, it's clear it's become more mainstream over the last few years.
According to a poll held in May 2022, 1 in 3 US adults believe an effort is underway to replace US-born Americans with immigrants for electoral gain. About 3 in 10 also worry that more immigration is causing US-born Americans to lose their economic, political, and cultural influence, according to a poll by the Associated Press. These figures show clearly how the Great Replacement theory appears to have evolved from taboo topic to commonly held belief. Numerous high-level politicians have shared content reflecting the values of the Great Replacement theory, contributing to its normalization. One of the key men who've been important in the normalization is Tucker Carlson. Carlson is a veteran TV personality who emerged in 2016 as an influential, authoritarian, anti-democracy, right-wing movement that rose to prominence around the political career of Donald Trump. Carlson's propaganda, which obsessively portrays white men as being victims of a corrupt, feminist, multicultural system, often mirrors the talking points found in fringe internet spaces where extremists congregate. He injects these talking points into his commentary on current events, giving extremists both an audience and a TV-ready polish that would be otherwise difficult to obtain. In 2022, the New York Times studied Carlson's shows and found that in more than 400 out of 1,100 episodes of Tucker Carlson Tonight, from 2016 to 21, he pushed the suggestion that elites work to change the demographics of the US to disadvantage white people. It's clear that the repetition of the Great Replacement narrative from such a highly viewed performer reshaped the landscape of radical right extremism in America.
It's clear that over time, far-right values are becoming increasingly more normalised. But what kind of consequences does this have, and why is it so dangerous? In the political sphere, some politicians are now increasingly adopting far-right rhetoric.
In 2022, EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell described Europe as a garden threatened by a surrounding jungle, a comment widely criticised for its colonial and racist undertones.
It is a good example of the European garden. Yes, Europe is a garden. We have built a garden. Everything works. It's the best combination of political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion that the humankind has been able to build. There's 3 things together. And here Bruges is maybe the good representation of beautiful things, intellectual life, well-being. The rest of the world, and you know very well, Federica, is not exactly a garden. The rest of the world, most of the rest of the world is a jungle. And the jungle could invade the garden.
A study by the University of California, Berkeley, revealed that exposure to online conspiracy theories significantly increases the likelihood of real-world violent behaviour.
One example of this is the Buffalo shooting in May 22, where a gunman carried out a racist attack on the black community in a grocery store. The perpetrator left behind an online screed suggesting the attack was motivated by the Great Replacement theory.
He was motivated by a classic version of the replacement theory, the view that a cabal of global elites are trying to destroy white nations via the systemic replacement of white populations. The gunman was deeply influenced by the Christchurch shooting in 2019, where 51 people were killed at 2 mosques in the name of white replacement theory.
Next, let's go into an example of one of the most shocking examples of an erosion of democratic values, the January 6, 2021 riot on the Capitol.
The riots came after one of the most contentious elections ever. Despite it quickly becoming clear Biden had won, the morning after, Trump maintained his false narrative of Democratic cheating by declaring himself the winner and denouncing the ongoing counting of absentee ballots as a fraud on the American people. During the next weeks, he continuously accused Biden and the Democrats of having stolen the presidential election.
Fellow Americans, today I want to explain to you why I am so determined to pursue every legal and constitutional option available to stop the theft of the presidential election As president, one of my most solemn duties is to protect the integrity of your sacred right to vote. This year, using the virus as a pretext, Democrat officials in the key swing states illegally violated their own state laws in order to enable, encourage, and facilitate fraud on a scale never before seen in the history of our country. The truth is, we won the election by a landslide. We won it big.
Allegations which were directly endorsed by several Republican members of Congress.
Gathered at a time when democracy is in crisis. Recent polling shows that 39% of Americans believe the election that just occurred, quote, was rigged. You may not agree with that assessment, but it is nonetheless a reality for nearly half the country.
Madam Speaker, I have constituents outside this building right now. I promised my voters to be their voice. In this branch of government, which I now serve, it is my separate but equal obligation to weigh in on this election and object. Are we not a government of, by, and for the people? They know that this election is not right, and as their representative, I am sent here to represent them. I will not allow the people to be ignored. Madam Speaker, it is my duty under the U.S. Constitution to object to the counting of the electoral votes of the state of Arizona. The members who stand here today and accept the results of this concentrated, coordinated, partisan effort by Democrats, where every fraudulent vote cancels out the vote of an honest America.
A Facebook group called Stop the Steal was created on November 4th and grew to some 320,000 members in less than 24 hours. Before the social media company shut it down because of posts containing misinformation and calls for violence. Subsequently, in tweets starting in mid-December, Trump encouraged his supporters to attend a rally and march on January 6th to protest the vote counting ceremony. In one tweet, Trump said, "Be there, it will be wild." On Jan 6th, in Trump's address, he repeated well-known falsehoods and conspiracy theories and encouraged the crowd to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol building and urged his audience to fight like hell, or you're not going to have a country anymore.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
Following this, a riot ensued.
Despite this, Trump was acquitted after a Senate trial in February. 57 senators voted to impeach him, however this was short of a majority by 10. However, Harvard University found that President Trump was liable for the riot that happened. That sums up today's documentary. I hope you've left feeling more informed. Thank you.